Some heroes wear caps, others have paws. He was only 9 years old, trapped under a sheet of ice, his tiny hands beating against it, gasping for air with no one around. But just when death felt inches away, his dog made a choice that changed everything. This is not just another story about a boy and his dog. This is about something deeper. Loyalty that knows no limits, courage that doesn't think twice, and a moment where a four-legged best friend did something not even grown adults had the strength to do. What you're about to hear will stay with you, especially the final moment, because no one saw it coming. It happened in early January, in a town where silence and snow fall in equal measure. Brainerd, Minnesota, a place where the air feels like glass, and the cold bites through 5 layers of clothing like it's paper, where the sun sets early behind rows of pine trees, and the lakes, endless, beautiful lakes, sleep under thick slabs of ice. Liam had lived there his whole life, just 9 years old, with eyes that sparkled like sunlight on snow, and a curiosity that couldn't be caged. He was the kind of boy who asked questions about everything: why birds fly south, how snowflakes are formed, what clouds taste like. The kind of boy who left mitten-shaped holes in every snowdrift because he couldn't resist jumping in. And then there was Max, the golden retriever with fur like sunshine, and a heart too big for his chest. Max was Liam's best friend in the way only dogs can be. Fiercely loyal, deeply intuitive, and never more than a few feet from Liam's side. Their bond wasn't just about playing fetch or sharing snacks. It was deeper, stronger. Max seemed to know what Liam was feeling before Liam said a word. Every day after school, Liam would burst through the front door yelling Max, and the retriever would thunder down the hallway like a freight train, ears flopping, tail a blur. They were inseparable during bike rides, snowball fights, lazy naps on the rug. Max wasn't just a pet, he was family. That winter had been colder than usual. Temperatures had dipped below zero for days at a time. The lake just beyond their backyard, Gull Lake, had frozen over in late November. By Christmas, it was solid enough to skate on, and by New Year's, local kids had cleared spots for hockey, while adults dragged out portable fishing huts. It seemed safe, but January plays tricks in Minnesota. A sudden, fleeting warm spell, just a few degrees above freezing, can change everything. Not enough to melt the snow, but enough to thin the ice, just enough in spots. Enough to turn safe into deadly, quiet into crisis. On the morning it happened, the sky was gray. Not stormy, not bright, just that heavy, slate-colored stillness that makes you feel like something's about to happen. Liam had just finished breakfast, oatmeal with a swirl of maple syrup, his favorite. His mom had kissed him on the forehead, saying she'd be back from the grocery store in an hour. His dad had already slipped into the garage, elbows deep in the stubborn engine of his old pickup. Liam stood by the back door, pulling on his boots. He looked over his shoulder. "Max," he called, from the living room. Max's ears perked up, one bark. Then he bolted toward the door, tail whipping back and forth, a leash clenched between his teeth, like a soldier reporting for duty. Liam laughed. "You knew I was going to take you," he said, grabbing his coat and hat. "All right, buddy, just a short walk, around the lake and back." Max barked again, excited. That's all he needed to hear. The two of them stepped out into the world together, Liam bundled tight, Max bouncing through knee-deep snow like it was nothing. Their footprints pressed fresh into the powder, side by side. The air was sharp. You could hear it when they breathed, little clouds puffing into the cold. As they neared the lake, Max slowed. His ears twitched, his body stiffened just a little. Dogs have this way of sensing things we don't. The shift in the wind, the smell of something foreign. Liam didn't notice. To him, the lake looked the same as always. A white sheet stretched smooth and flat, like the world had pressed pause. He walked confidently, boots crunching on snow, humming a tune he'd made up. Max stayed closer than usual, his body tense. He kept glancing toward Liam, and then back at the ice. And that's when Liam saw it, something shiny embedded in the surface near the lake's edge. Just 10 feet from where he stood, it glinted faintly through a thin patch of snow. A coin, he wondered aloud. Or maybe, whoa, a hockey puck. It was something small, circular, metal. He couldn't tell, but for a curious 9-year-old, it might as well have been treasure. He stepped forward. Max barked, not a playful bark, not the throw the ball bark, a sharp, urgent, panicked sound. Liam turned to look at him. "What?" he laughed. "It's just right there, Max. I'll be super fast, I promise." Max barked again, louder. Liam took another step. The snow on the ice was thinner here, almost melted in spots. Beneath it, the frozen lake glistened, dark blue, smooth and slightly wet. He didn't notice, Max was pacing now, circling, barking nonstop. He planted himself between Liam and the water, trying to block him, but Liam sidestepped. "It's fine, Max. Seriously, it's like 2 steps away." He reached out with one foot, then the other. Carefully, cautiously, he moved onto the frozen surface. It didn't creak, didn't crack. It held. He grinned. "See," he said, looking back. Max didn't stop barking. Liam bent down, fingers brushing the object. It was a small, rusted metal badge, like one from an old uniform. He'd never seen anything like it. He turned it in his glove. Cool. Then a sound. It wasn't loud, just a pop, a delicate snap, like stepping on a pencil. Liam's eyes darted down. A hairline fracture raced across the ice beneath him like lightning. Then another. Then another. He didn't have time to scream. The ice shattered beneath his feet, and he plunged into blackness. Gone. Just like that. Max lunged forward with a roar, but it was too late. The water swallowed Liam whole, and the silence that followed was terrifying. There were no witnesses, no one out for a jog, no fishermen on the lake that day, no other kids playing, just Max. The lake closed over the hole, like nothing had happened. Underneath, the world was chaos. The cold hit Liam like a punch to the chest. His lungs seized. He kicked, flailed. His coat ballooned with water. The ice above looked blurry and warped, impossible to tell where he had fallen through. His gloved hands slapped against the underside, searching for the hole. But the water was dark, and everything was shifting. He tried to scream, but only bubbles rose. Above, Max barked so loud his voice cracked. He ran in circles, pawed at the ice, sniffed frantically. He could see Liam, his shadow moving beneath the surface, distorted and panicking. Max's paws skidded across the frozen lake as he barked again and again. But barking wasn't enough, and that's when Max turned. Without hesitation, he bolted, back across the lake, back through the snow, running like something was chasing him, or like he was chasing time itself. And in a way he was, because Liam had been underwater for nearly a minute now, and the clock was ticking. The sound was subtle, almost deceiving, a sharp, crisp snap that echoed in the stillness of the frozen lake. To an untrained ear, it might have resembled the innocuous breaking of a distant twig. But for Liam, standing alone on the vast, icy expanse, that sound was the prelude to a nightmare. His breath hitched, eyes widening as he instinctively froze, every muscle in his young body tensing. Max, his ever-faithful golden retriever, who had been barking moments before, fell into an eerie silence, sensing the gravity of the moment. Time seemed to stretch, each heartbeat echoing in Liam's ears like a drum. The world around him blurred, the distant shoreline and snow-laden trees, fading into insignificance. All that remained was the fragile ice beneath his feet and the abyss that lurked below. He dared not move, hoping, praying that stillness would be his salvation. But fate had other plans. Without further warning, the ice beneath Liam's boots surrendered with a sickening crack, fragmenting like shattered glass. The boy's scream was swallowed by the cold as he plunged into the frigid depths below. The once solid world gave way to an icy embrace, pulling him into darkness. Max's reaction was instantaneous. The moment Liam disappeared beneath the surface, Max lunged forward, his paws skidding on the slick ice. He reached the jagged edge where Liam had fallen, barking frantically, his eyes wild with panic. Circling the hole, he whined and pawed at the ice, desperate to reach his boy. But the barrier was unyielding, and Max's heart raced with fear. Beneath the surface, Liam was engulfed by chaos. The shock of the icy water was immediate and brutal, seizing his lungs and robbing him of breath. His limbs felt like lead, each movement sluggish and uncoordinated. Disoriented, he struggled to determine which way was up, the murky water offering no clues. His hands reached out, searching for the hole he had fallen through, but the shifting ice above had concealed his entry point. Panic set in, his mind racing as he realized the gravity of his predicament. Water seeped into his boots and gloves, the cold biting into his skin like needles. His movements became more frantic, each second feeling like an eternity. He tried to scream, but only a stream of bubbles escaped, rising to a surface he couldn't see. The world was a blur of darkness and cold, and Liam's strength began to wane. Above, Max's desperation grew. He could see Liam's shadowy form moving beneath the ice, a distorted figure trapped in a watery prison. The realization that he couldn't reach Liam tore at Max's heart. He barked louder, hoping someone, anyone, would hear and come to their aid. But the lake was deserted, the usual sounds of life muffled by the thick blanket of snow. It was just Max, the wind, and the unyielding ice. Then, in a moment that defied logic and expectation, Max made a decision. He turned away from the hole, casting one last glance at the spot where Liam had vanished. With a determined bark, he sprinted towards the shoreline, his paws kicking up snow as he raced against time. His mind was singular in focus. Get help. The journey home was a blur. Max navigated the familiar path with precision, leaping over fallen branches and darting through the trees. His lungs burned, each breath a puff of steam in the cold air. But he didn't falter. He couldn't. Liam's life depended on him. Reaching the neighborhood, Max didn't hesitate. He barked at every door, his paws scratching at the wood, pleading for attention. Some neighbors dismissed the noise, assuming it was just a dog being a nuisance. But Max persisted, his barks growing more urgent, more desperate. Finally, Mr. Delgado, an elderly man known for his fondness for animals, took notice. He opened his door to find Max, eyes wide with panic, for damp from the snow. The sight was alarming. Max was usually a calm dog, always friendly and composed. Seeing him in such a state sent a jolt of concern through Mr. Delgado. "Max, what's wrong, boy?" he asked, stepping onto his porch. Max barked in response, turning in circles before darting a few steps away, then looking back, urging Mr. Delgado to follow. The message was clear. Something was terribly wrong. Trusting the dog's instincts, Mr. Delgado grabbed his coat and followed Max, who led him with unwavering determination back towards the lake. The journey was swift, Max occasionally looking back to ensure Mr. Delgado was keeping pace. The older man's heart pounded, a mix of exertion and dread. He didn't know what awaited him, but Max's urgency spoke volumes. As they approached the lake, the scene became clear. The lake, which had once seemed like a serene winter wonderland, now loomed as a perilous, frozen expanse. What had begun as an ordinary walk with his best friend had transformed into a life-and-death struggle. The silence that followed Liam's fall into the icy water was suffocating. Max stood at the edge of the hole, frantic, desperate, unable to help the boy he loved so dearly. Mr. Delgado, the elderly neighbor, stood frozen beside Max, his breath catching in his throat. There was no time to waste. The seconds were ticking away like an hourglass, and each one felt like it could be Liam's last. The moment they arrived at the lake, Max's urgency was unmistakable. He had been running on sheer instinct, his mind focused solely on finding his young friend. And now, standing at the edge, watching the dog panting heavily, it was clear to Mr. Delgado that Max was not going to wait for help. Max was going to do whatever it took to save Liam. "Max and oh," Mr. Delgado shouted, but it was too late. Without a second thought, Max took a running leap, his body sailing through the air, and plunged into the freezing water with a splash that sent icy droplets flying in every direction. The sound was deafening, echoing across the desolate lake. Max's form disappeared beneath the broken surface, swallowed whole by the same treacherous hole that had claimed Liam moments earlier. Mr. Delgado stood paralyzed, his heart racing. He had screamed, but the fear that seized his chest was overwhelming. He had witnessed the dog's devotion to Liam for years, but this was something no one could have ever prepared for. Max, the dog who had always been a loyal companion, a playful friend, had just thrown himself into the abyss without a single hesitation. Max was in the water now, churning beneath the ice, his powerful legs kicking against the cold, desperately trying to navigate the depths. The water was shockingly cold, colder than anything Max had ever experienced, but it didn't slow him down. He could feel Liam's presence in the murky water, the boy's faint movements below the surface. In that moment, Max was no longer just a dog. He was a hero. Mr. Delgado stood by the edge of the ice, unable to tear his gaze away from the water. His hand shook as he reached for his phone, dialing 911, but his mind was filled with nothing but panic. He had no idea if Max would be able to find Liam, let alone pull him from the freezing depths. But what else could he do? Max had acted, and now the only thing left was to wait and pray. The seconds stretched into minutes, each one heavier than the last. Mr. Delgado's breath came in shallow gasps, and his pulse pounded in his ears. Max was under the ice. Liam was under the ice. What if it was too late? What if this was the end? The thought of losing them both gnawed at Mr. Delgado's soul. And then, just as hope seemed to be slipping away, something shifted. Max surfaced, his head breaking through the water with a force that sent droplets cascading around him. His mouth was clamped firmly around something. Liam's jacket. Max's strong jaws held on tightly, his body shivering violently in the freezing cold as he began to swim towards the shore. His paws kicked furiously, propelling both himself and Liam toward the edge of the lake. Mr. Delgado's heart stopped for a split second. There was Liam, his small body floating unconscious in the water, but alive. Max had found him. Max had reached him, and now, together, they were moving toward the safety of the shoreline. Mr. Delgado didn't hesitate. He rushed to the edge of the water, dropping to his knees, his hands trembling as he prepared to pull them both to safety. Max, shivering and weak, continued to push Liam forward, his body nearly spent from the effort. The dog's eyes, wide with determination, were locked onto Mr. Delgado. He was so close now, so close to saving the boy. The sound of sirens filled the air. The rescue team was arriving, but time felt as though it had been suspended. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for the next moment, the moment when Max and Liam would be pulled from the icy grasp of death. The rescue team crawled out onto the lake, ropes in hand. They quickly made their way to the edge, securing one end of the rope to a nearby tree and throwing the other to Mr. Delgado. He grasped it with both hands, pulling as hard as he could, his body straining with the effort. Max, though exhausted, had brought Liam close enough that the rescue team could finally reach them. Liam's lifeless body was pulled from the water first. His face was blue, his lips purple, and his body completely still. There was no sign of life. The paramedics rushed forward, immediately starting chest compressions. They worked frantically, their hands moving with practiced urgency as they attempted to revive the young boy. Max was pulled from the water next, his body shivering uncontrollably as he collapsed beside Liam. His coat was slick with water, his fur matted, and his breathing was labored. But his eyes never left Liam. He lay next to the boy, his body trembling, but his gaze steady. He watched, unwavering, as the paramedics worked to bring Liam back. The minutes felt like hours. The air was thick with tension. The only sounds the frantic commands of the paramedics and the quiet whine of Max. He had given everything, his body, his strength, his heart, and now all he could do was wait. Wait and hope that Liam would make it. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Liam's chest rose. It was shallow, but it was real. A faint gasp escaped his lips, and Max let out a low whine. His tail thumped once on the cold ice, a soft, almost imperceptible motion, but it was enough. Max knew. He knew that Liam was going to be okay. The paramedics continued their work, their hands still moving rapidly as they stabilized Liam. But Max had already done his part. He had risked his life, braved the icy waters, and saved his best friend. And now, as Liam began to breathe again, Max's body collapsed beside him, utterly spent. Liam's eyelids fluttered open, and the first thing he saw was Max. The dog was curled up beside him, his eyes locked onto Liam's face. Without a word, Liam reached out, his fingers trembling, and gently patted Max's head. He had no idea how he had gotten here, how he had survived, but one thing was certain: Max had saved him. Max, Liam whispered hoarsely, his voice barely audible. "You saved me." Max's tail thumped once more, and the boy smiled weakly, his heart swelling with gratitude for the dog who had given everything to bring him back from the brink of death. Max didn't need praise. He didn't need recognition. All he needed was Liam, and in that moment, he had everything he had ever wanted. The rescue team worked quickly, wrapping Liam in blankets and rushing him to the ambulance. Max, despite his exhaustion, stayed by his side. He wouldn't leave Liam. Not now. Not ever. As the ambulance sped away, Max sat by the side of the road, watching, waiting for Liam to come back. And as the vehicle disappeared into the distance, Max's eyes never wavered. This was his job. This was his family. Max had done the impossible, and in the end, he had saved Liam. Liam was rushed to the hospital, his body temperature dangerously low. The cold from the icy waters had taken its toll, and his small body was struggling to regain warmth. The doctors worked quickly, their faces tight with focus, as they hooked him up to monitors and IVs, trying to stabilize his vitals. But there was one thing that kept the doctors going, one thing that, despite all the odds, allowed them to hold on to hope. It wasn't just the medical equipment or the fast response. It was the sheer will to survive, and something more, something unexplainable. It was Max. Liam's survival was nothing short of a miracle. The doctors said that if he had been in the water for just a few minutes longer, the outcome would have been tragically different. But it wasn't just the cold that posed a danger. It was the time. In the freezing waters of that lake, a few minutes could mean the difference between life and death. The fact that Max had been there, had jumped in without hesitation, had guided Liam to safety with his jaws locked around his jacket. This is what saved him. Max didn't just alert someone. He didn't wait for help. He didn't stand on the shore, barking in panic, hoping for a human to take charge. He dove in. He stayed underwater, He did what no one else could do in that moment. He acted, and he acted with a purpose: to save the boy he loved. Most dogs, in such a situation, would have panicked. They would have barked, perhaps run in circles, but they wouldn't have ventured out onto the ice. They wouldn't have plunged into the freezing depths, knowing the risk, knowing the danger. But Max didn't hesitate. His love for Liam, the bond they shared, transcended fear. And in that moment, he proved that loyalty wasn't just a word. It was a powerful force that could defy the most terrifying odds. When Liam finally woke up the next day, the soft beep of the hospital monitors greeting him, the first thing he felt was warmth. The sterile smell of the hospital, the blinding white lights, they were all distant. What mattered most in that moment was the feeling of comfort, the familiarity of something, or someone, he loved. The first thing he did, despite the grogginess in his voice and the lingering coldness in his bones, was look around the room. His eyes scanned slowly, weakly, searching for the one thing that had kept him anchored through the chaos of his near-death experience. "Where's Max?" he whispered, his voice hoarse, dry from the shock his body had endured. His hand instinctively reached out, the desire to be close to his dog, to feel his warmth, stronger than anything else in the world. The nurse standing at the foot of his bed smiled softly. "Max is right here, sweetie. He's been waiting for you." And just like that, Max appeared. His golden fur was matted with remnants of the water from the lake, his body still a little damp, but his eyes were as bright as ever. They locked onto Liam's, and in that single moment, all the exhaustion, all the trauma, all the fear melted away. Max's tail wagged gently, and he nudged his head against Liam's hand, as if to reassure him that everything was going to be okay. Liam's hand trembled as he reached out, his fingers brushing the soft fur on Max's head. The feeling of relief that washed over him was indescribable. Max wasn't just a dog. He wasn't just an animal. He was family. He was everything. The nurses allowed Max to stay with Liam, an exception to the usual hospital rules. But it wasn't just out of kindness. It was clear to everyone who witnessed their bond that Max wasn't just a pet. He was a lifesaver, and no one could deny the deep connection between him and Liam. So, for the next few days, Max stayed by Liam's side, curled up beside him on the hospital bed, never straying far from his boy. And as Liam slowly recovered, so did Max. The dog's shivering had stopped, and his exhaustion was starting to fade, though the look in his eyes never left. Constant vigilance, love, and protection. The story of Max's bravery quickly spread across town, and before long, it was all over the news. Headlines splashed across newspapers, social media posts flooded timelines, and every news outlet seemed to be broadcasting the same heroic tale. Hero dog saves boy from icy death. Golden retriever brings child back from the brink. Loyalty on a leash. Max the lifesaver. To the world, Max had become a symbol of bravery and loyalty. He was a hero, but to Liam, Max was so much more. Max wasn't a hero because of what the world saw on the news. Max was a hero because of what he had done. He had been there when no one else could be. He had risked everything, without hesitation, because that was what love, true love, meant. But Liam, despite the media's fascination with Max's actions, didn't see him as a hero. To him, Max wasn't a legend. He wasn't a headline. He wasn't a figure to be worshipped. Max was simply Max, his best friend, the dog who had always been by his side, the one who had been with him through the happiest moments and the most difficult ones. Liam's mind wandered back to the days when he and Max would run together, their feet pounding the earth as they played in the yard. The days when Max had been a playful pup, bounding through the snow, barking in joy, always by Liam's side, always keeping watch. Those were the moments that defined their bond. Not this one. This one, as incredible as it was just a reflection of the love they shared every single day. Max didn't need praise. He didn't need a trophy. He didn't need the world to recognize his actions. The only thing Max needed was for Liam to be okay, for Liam to wake up, for Liam to smile and reach out to him, to pat him on the head and say, "Good boy." That was all he needed. And now that was happening. The media attention that followed was overwhelming, but it never changed Max's behavior. He didn't care about the cameras. He didn't care about the headlines. When the hospital staff moved Liam to a rehabilitation center, Max was there every step of the way. He stayed by Liam's side, lying on the floor beside his bed, keeping watch. The bond they shared had transcended words. It was understood in every glance, every gentle touch, every shared breath. Max's life, though, began to change in other ways. He received gifts from well-wishers, dog treats, toys, even a new collar with a golden tag engraved with the word hero. But Max didn't care about the material things. He cared about Liam, and that was all that mattered. When Liam was finally well enough to leave the hospital, Max was there to greet him. As they walked out of the building, side by side, Liam smiled down at his dog. Max's tail wagged happily, and Liam couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. He had always known that Max was special, but now he understood it more than ever. Liam's recovery was slow, but with Max by his side, every day felt a little easier. The world around them had changed, but to Liam and Max, life had returned to what it had always been, a friendship built on love, trust, and an unspoken understanding that no matter what happened, they would always be there for each other. In the years that followed, Liam and Max continued to share countless memories. They grew older together, and their bond only deepened with time. But Liam never forgot the moment that had defined their relationship, the moment when Max had saved his life. Liam knew that Max didn't need the world to recognize his heroism. He didn't need the accolades, the praise, or the spotlight. All Max needed, all he had ever needed, was Liam. And Liam knew that no matter where life took them, they would always be there for each other. Max had saved him, not for fame, not for glory, but simply because he loved him. And that, in the end, was what made Max the greatest hero of all. Subscribe to watch the next video for another story that'll hit your heart even harder.